Welcome to the CarNewsCafe.com podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Adam Yamada-Hanf with the CarNewsCafe.com podcast. Please check us out on Twitter at CarNewsCafe. Tweet us any questions you have. You can also check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/CarNewsCafeOnline. We also have a Google Plus community. You can check that out too if you want. Now this week, Nicholas Zart is not with us because he couldn't get up early enough. Because in California, everyone either gets up to go surfing or they're lazy.
This is Aaron Turpin with CarNewsCafe.com. Adam covered all the bases on our social media, so I would just tell you to visit us on YouTube, where we have really cool videos, including one of the most popular videos on the planet, my review of the Elio three-wheeled car. Today we have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, and we'll probably do it much more coherently because we won't have the Frenchman here to mess us up.
So this week, one of our part-time contributors, Tim Esterdale, wrote an article about the Subaru BRZ and SCion FRS, known as the Toyobaru. Apparently, sales are much better than either automaker has anticipated, which honestly isn't that surprising because it's a cheap, inexpensive, and very, very nice sports car that a lot of people can buy.
Well, the BRZ is a great car. I had a lot of fun driving it. The difference between the BRZ and the FRS, when you just look at the cars, is the interior. Otherwise, they're exactly the same car. The SCion sells at a much lower level than the BRZ, and most of that can be just attributed to straight marketing. The BRZ gets much more marketing hype than the FRS has been getting. Subaru has done a phenomenal job pushing this, and Subaru sales overall through their whole product lineup has been just growing quickly. It's been much higher this year. Tim gave exact numbers in his article for all of that. It's very interesting that he would note this because I hadn't actually seen this from Edmunds, where he originally sourced it. And it's an interesting note because the theme or the talk in automotive marketing circles now is that millennials, these kids that are just coming of age, are not buying new cars. That's been kind of the, this is what's happening. But looking at the numbers, they're just not buying the cars these people think they should be buying. They are buying cars. It's just they're not buying the ones that they think they should be buying or they expect them to buy. What do you think, Adam? You're much closer to that age group than I am.
Yeah, I think the assessment that kids aren't interested in cars, well, maybe somewhat accurate, as everyone I know in my circle like to talk about the latest apps or smartphones. I think there's still a good market for coming out with a reasonably priced car, which is fun to drive and, is sturdy. I've driven the Subaru BRZ, and it's a really great car. It's definitely a car I would buy if I had the money, which I currently don't.
I drove the BRZ on the racetrack and found it to be a lot of fun. On the road, I didn't drive it for long enough to really get much of an impression other than just a quick tour of the car, but it gave me the impression that it was a great everyday driver and also a lot of fun for what it's kind of meant for, which is to at least give you the idea that you can compete on the racetrack, even if you never actually use it for that. So, it's a fun little car. It handles exceedingly well. It's rear-wheel drive, front engine mount, the configuration that everybody wants. It's a great little car, and it's priced right. These are fully outfitted. They're still right around the $25,000 mark. It's a neat little car, and I think that these two companies working together really landed on the bullseye.
My only issue with the car, they're okay looking, but when you look at a Subaru BRZ or SCion FRS, they're not cars I particularly am like, I look at it and I'm like, wow, I really, really want to have that. When you get in and drive it, it's a lot of fun, but the looks don't blow me away.
Well, the styling is very contemporary. It's simple. The thing is, though, when you look at this car, you immediately know that it is a Japanese sports car. The Nissan GT-R has that same quality. When you look at them, you know that it's a Japanese sports car. And that's kind of what they were going after. I don't think they wanted to overstyle it because they wanted a broader market. And if you look at the sales number, unusually for these cars, they're selling very well to women. Normally, these little sports cars have women as a very small portion of their demographic, but almost a quarter of all FRS buyers are girls, and about 18, I think it was, percent of the BRZ buyers are women. And that's pretty unusual for the small sports car market like this.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Definitely.
Now, here's the funny thing. If you buy one of these cars on a lease, and then 2 years from now you have a kid and you need to get out of the car because you need a car that will accommodate your family, according to Adam's article, which is also on our website right now.
Yeah, I read an article about car lease approval rates, which I guess have gone up. Now, normally this is about the most boring thing I could think of to write about, but I decided to have fun with it, and I threw in some funny bits into the article. One of them, which Aaron and I were talking about before we started recording the podcast, was most of the people I know who need to get out of a car lease, usually they're guys who leased a convertible or sports car, and they thought they would only, okay, so I have it for 2 or 3 years and then it's out. And then it turns out, their girlfriend or wife is pregnant, so they need to get a sedan or worse, a minivan.
Well, it's funny because when my wife got pregnant with our first one, all we had in the driveway was a Honda Civic and a Toyota pickup truck. And so we could fit car seats into the Civic, and we did for a little while, actually. We spent almost 2 years with ultimately 2 babies in that little Civic. But anybody who knows those cars, like Adam, you have an Accord, imagine filling the back seat with car seats. Then where do you put the rest of your stuff? Because babies come with a lot of accessories, especially when you have 2 of them. You have strollers, you have the diaper bag, and all that stuff, the formula, everything, the just-in-case crap you have to carry around with you. And by the time you're done with it, the trip to the grocery store starts looking less and less realistic, and you have to kind of tag team it where somebody watches the kids at home and the other one takes the car solo to go do the shopping. Anyway, I thought that was hilarious when you said that they had to trade their car in for a minivan, because I didn't have a lease. We owned the Honda outright and we owned the Toyota outright. But I can relate to that because we did ultimately buy a minivan. And had I been leasing something like the BRZ or any sort of sports car, I would have, right now in my driveway, my test car this week is a little Volkswagen Beetle Convertible, which is the most unfamily-friendly car I have been in a very long time. So I can imagine having to try to get rid of that in order to go get a minivan. How much of a bummer that is. Because, a minivan, even the one from Mazda like we have, it's not a sporty car. I mean, there's nothing about a minivan that has fun factor. I don't care whose it is.
I think they need to have like a minivan racing or try and do something.
There is a minivan monster truck. And I've seen minivans these are older ones, like the Chevy Astros and stuff. I've seen those in crash-up derbies before. Minivans have a specific purpose, and people who buy them and use them don't buy them because they want a sports car. They buy them because they want a convenient car. And I can tell you one thing from experience. If you have kids in diapers and in car seats, those sliding doors make all the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you liked the VW Turbo Convertible? I think you said you were going to take your 2 girls in it this week.
Yeah, I got it on Tuesday, and I've put close to 300 miles on it now. And that's simply because I did not expect this little VW to be a whole lot of fun. I kind of expected it to be a little bit fun and kind of cool. And it is a total chick magnet car. I'll tell you that right off. Girls love this car. It's universal. My little sister wants to buy one. Everywhere I go, people that I know, when I stop and talk to them or park it to go into the store to get a soda or something, they all want to go for a ride in the thing. It's a total chick magnet car, but it is wholly impractical. When we put the car seats in, my girls still cannot put their feet straight out the front of the car seat. They have to kind of straddle the back of the front seats. But the turbo is just killer. So this little car is putting out a lot of horsepower per pound. I haven't sat down and done the math, but it's putting out a lot of horsepower per pound. And getting on the freeway, I stopped at the bottom of the on-ramp, and I had a friend of mine named Kerry O'Dean in the car. If you remember that Nissan Altima photo that I took with Pete's Auto Service in the background, or Pete's Service in the background, he owns that building and the gas pumps that are around it that he's restoring. Anyway, we were on the bottom of the freeway on-ramp at 0 miles per hour. I stopped completely. And then I feathered it, because if you just slam the pedal to the floor, you will squeal the tires. It's awesome. So I feathered it to control the speed and torque and keep traction. And by the time we merged onto the freeway off of that on-ramp, and this is an average on-ramp, I was going 97 miles an hour. So it's a huge speed machine. Quarter mile, I was able to do the quarter mile at 103. So it's just a phenomenal little car. Complete surprise. You have no idea that this little thing is going to be doing that. So a lot more fun than I expected. Adam can probably see it. I have a sunburn right now because I spent the entire day yesterday doing photo ops with this car and had the top down the entire time. So I got some nice bake going on.
I guess if it's a chick magnet, I will call the VW press rep after we get off the podcast.
It's amazing because guys all have the same reaction to the car. They look at it and go, oh, wow, gay car, right? They think that only gay guys will own this car. It's actually one of the groups that VW markets towards very specifically. But what most guys don't realize is that those kinds of cars, girls love the things. And so you're much more likely to get a girl in a car like this than you are in like a Camaro. This car is completely the opposite because girls love the look and style of the thing, and it shows them, in my mind anyway, this is how I justify it, it tells them that you are secure in yourself, so you don't give a crap if everybody thinks that you might be gay.
Yeah, most guys don't realize actually most girls they're more attracted to cute cars, not cars that you necessarily want to drive. Well, Aaron would know because last week he had the Nissan Frontier Pro4X as his test car, which kind of interesting to go from a off-roading truck to a VW Bug convertible.
That's the thing. When you buy a pickup truck that you never plan to actually carry anything serious in or go off-road with, you're buying that truck because you think it makes you look cool, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody buys things because they want to look cool having it, right? That's why you have to have the latest iPhone or whatever else. If your goal is to get girls, then you really should think about what girls want, not what you want, because women have much different tastes than we do. And honestly, if I was out trolling for women, I would take a car like this because you're much more likely to score, I guess, than you would be in a big pickup truck with twice pipes and a glass pack and everything else, or sports car, your Corvette or whatever. The Pro 4X is exactly what I was talking about. Girls like this, but they're not going to love it. They're not going to come to you just because this is what you're driving. This is more of a vehicle that you will buy and drive because you are very serious about kayaking and fishing and camping and off-roading and going out into the country and doing stuff. That's what this is for. And it's tons of fun and extremely capable. I had a lot of fun in the thing. I had to wash it, I think, 4 times because I kept getting mud all over it. And the photos and the review I just posted last night will show you that. But it's a great vehicle. It has everything in one package. It's not really good at any one thing except off-roading. But it does most things capably enough that it's a decent vehicle to own if you're in the market segment, the type of person that wants to own this. What do you think, Adam? Would you buy one of these?
I haven't really done much research or read much about the Nissan Frontier. It seems like a truck that Nissan has, but they don't necessarily market or try and get the word out about it too much.
Well, they haven't been marketing it much the last couple of years because it hasn't had a design refresh since 2006, so it's kind of long in the tooth. I'm told by the Nissan rep that it will be redesigned sometime in the next 2 years, and so since they haven't announced it for 2014, I'm assuming 2015 for this. This year's model, the 2013 model, was an Edmunds top 10 pick. Edmunds chose it as the midsize pickup to own. This truck sells like hotcakes. And it's actually one of Nissan's top-selling vehicles that's not a sedan. And it's built entirely in Tennessee. It's a great, great truck. It'll do everything you want, unless you want really good fuel economy, because it does not do that. But it's a great truck.
What does the VW get, just out of curiosity? MPG-wise.
The little VW, it's actually not as awesome as people would think because it's the turbo. It gets 29 on the highway. But 29 is not all that horrible considering how sporty the little car is.
So, the other day I was asked to give a quote for an article in The Blaze about what happened to the Chevy Volt, basically. And the article is pretty interesting because I didn't realize this, but if you check Google Trend statistics, it shows that there have been less and less articles about the Volt, and the search volume for it has been going down, and it seems like Chevy recently hasn't really been pushing it. The Chevy Volt not being marketed by Chevy is due to a few reasons. They have some other models currently that they're trying to push, so it's not necessarily on the top of their to-do list. But, you know, a lot of people say that, well, the Chevy Volt hasn't made money for GM, and therefore it's not a useful car. But I have my own opinions about this, but the perspective the reporter Beckett Adams was trying to get was how GM would view it. Now, most people at GM, and this includes Larry Nitz, would tell you we've used a lot of the technology and what we learned from that program, and we've incorporated that into other vehicles all across the GM line. What's your take on it, Aaron?
There's a few things, and you hit on a lot of them. A lot of things that are used in the Volt, like the start-stop technology, the improved engine performance, things like that, they're being used throughout the GM line, just like you said. The other thing, though, is automakers tend to focus on one or two vehicles, usually the newest redesigns or new releases that they do, and the Volt is not that. It was brand new a couple of years ago. Now it's, you know, they're doing very little to refresh it because it's not up in the cycle, and so they're focusing on different vehicles. This year they're focusing very heavily on the Impala and the Cruze, and so the Volt kind of, you know, takes a back burner, and it's not because it's the Volt, it's just because of where it is in its refresh cycle. So, you know, that's normal in automotive. So the Volt is getting less press, and I think that the author of that article was correct also in saying that the bailouts and the, you know, the green jobs flop and all the other stuff is kind of old news now. It's not really the topic of conversation. You know, for lack of a better term, I guess, the right wing is pushing other things. You know, they're talking about Benghazi and whatever. And so it's no longer a big issue. Everybody now is talking about, like, Tesla Motors. When they talk about electrics, Tesla Motors is getting all the headlines. The Volt has just kind of been pushed into the background. I will say, though, that the Volt is not a horrible car. There's really nothing wrong with the car other than I think it's been somewhat marketed incorrectly, and also the perceptions people have of the car versus what it actually is are almost never the same thing. People think of the Volt as, you know, an electric car or an extremely green vehicle or something, but in reality, the Volt only seats 4 people, has no luggage space to speak of. It's a commuter car. It's not a everyday family car. And also, when you're on the highway, 37 miles a gallon out of a car that size is not that great. Still, it's not a horrible car, but back to the point, most of the reason that nobody's paying attention to the Volt is just because it's not GM's marketing focus right now. So they're not throwing out press releases about every little nut and bolt that happens to change or have some sort of environmental impact or whatever. You know, it's just changed. Their focus is elsewhere right now. But we are going to see the new Cadillac that's basically a Volt in Cadillac form pretty quick. And they've been talking about but haven't done anything with the SUV/pickup truck option. I think they're leaving that up to VIA Motors.
An article Aaron did about the Chevy Volt 2, the top 5 misconceptions, which got a lot of traffic when we initially released it, and I will still stand by. The one contention I 100% agree with is that people claim it gets over 200 miles per gallon. Now the thing is that I've actually talked with GM engineers who worked on the Volt, including Larry Nitz, and they were like, the Chevy Volt can't get over 200 miles per gallon because at a certain point, if you're using no gas, that's basically not a metric you can really use, right? If you're only using it as an electric car, it's basically not really a viable metric, and that's even what I talked with Larry Nitz about at a Chevy Spark EV event several months ago. And I know one of the press people who has a Chevy Volt He said he was getting like 130, I guess, MPGE or whatever. And one of the Volt engineers who was sitting right there said, "Wow, that's really impressive. That's a lot." And I asked him straight up, I said, "What do you think of these people who claim to get, like 200, 800 miles per gallon out of the Volt?" He's like, "I honestly don't think that's possible, but..."
In my opinion, if you buy a Volt and then you drive it to the point where you're getting 200 or 300 miles to the gallon because you're almost never burning any gasoline, why the hell did you buy a Volt? Why didn't you spend a lot less money and buy a Leaf, which actually has more room and is more practical? If all you needed was a commuter car, why didn't you buy an iMEV, a little Mitsubishi iMEV, or one of these other electric cars? Why didn't you go battery electric? Is range anxiety that big for you that you had to spend the extra money to get the Voltec platform so that when you do decide to go to grandma's house, you can just go, by the way, ruin your 200 mile per gallon or better average? I don't understand those people. But on the other hand, looking at the market, the guys and women, but mostly guys, who are buying the Volt are not buying it because they are afraid of range or anything like that. They're buying it for the same reason early adopters of the Prius bought it. It's a status symbol. They want the American car that gets really good mileage and is considered the most advanced and whatever. Frankly, sit down and think about it. That's really why you bought the car, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the funny thing is that even some of the engineers and Larry Ned said, well, we didn't build the Volt so you only use it on electric power.
Yeah, it's not meant for that. It's their dream market is the person, the guy or girl who commutes every day on an average commute, right? 20 or 30 miles. And so they would use the Volt all electric 5 days a week. And then every so often they might need to go to, Costco or the grocery store or somewhere. And so they will take the Volt on that. And then kids need to go to their soccer game and whatever else. They don't have to worry about stopping to plug in. They'll just go to it, drive it like a normal everyday car, and use a little bit of gasoline once in a while and probably have to fill the tank once a month. But you hear all these people that are these hardcore Volt fans that are in the forums and going off on the thing all the time. And they're bragging about how many miles they drive all electric without ever using a drop of gas. And I just have to wonder, why did you buy the car? Why didn't you take the full leap and go battery electric?
One of the biggest misconceptions about the Volt is that it is an electric car, and it's not. A lot of people get confused about that.
Yeah, it's a plug-in, basically. The proper term for the Volt is a range extended electric, which is just a kind of a fancy way of saying it's a plug-in hybrid with a larger battery.
Personally, if I want to drive on electric power, I would buy a Nissan Leaf or a Tesla Model S. I'm not going to go get a Volt, but that's my personal opinion about it. Anyways, I guess the last thing for today is we just have some Ferrari videos. This went viral a couple months ago, but it's a kid driving a Ferrari in India. And then we also have a video of Fernando Alonso, who's a F1 driver for Ferrari, taking the LaFerrari supercar hybrid for a drive. This is Adam E. Monahan signing out for the Car News Cafe podcast. If you have any questions for next week's podcast, please send us a tweet at Car News Cafe. You can also post a question on our Facebook page, Car News Cafe Online.
And this is Aaron Turpin with CarNewsCafe.com. Send us anything you want to hear. Ask us questions. Tell us what kind of articles you want to read, or tell us what you want to hear on this podcast, or even give us suggestions for B-roll and funny footage to throw into the YouTubes for these podcasts. I have a lot of fun making those, and so, if you have any suggestions of something you would like to see and it's reasonable, I'll do my best to try to get it in there. When I'm out filming a car, I put a lot of effort into doing some outtakes that I can use for that. So it's good to talk to everybody, and we'll see you again next week. Slayer!